Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video. Want to take a look at this data deep dive by Steam. How are new releases on Steam performing? Now, a little bit of context before we get into this. There has always been this notion online in regards to Steam, PC gaming in general, but Steam more so, that there are too many games released, and yes, objectively, there are a ton of games released on Steam. Are all of them good? Absolutely not. There are some pretty bad games on Steam. However, while I wouldn't say it's a one-to-one kind of thing, there are also a lot of freaking great games. Not only that, there are a lot of freaking great games that are released every week. This idea that it's just bad games flooding into Steam, if you've ever had that idea, well, maybe in your opinion, they're bad games. You can have that opinion, but look at the Steam reception. Even if the reviews are sparse because not everybody can play these games, there are a lot of good games on Steam, even like free-to-play titles that come out. Look at a game that I just covered, like We Went Back. That's a freebie that just released on Steam, and it's a really cool one, and the fact of the matter is games like this are releasing all the time. West of the Dead is another game, In Other Waters. Those are just games that released very, very recently, and they're very interesting titles. Well, that's why I've always been of the mindset that, hey, open up the floodgates, let a lot of games be released on Steam with a certain limitation, of course. Like, I don't want certain stuff on Steam, and I won't get into that now, but for the most part, I think Steam does do a good job of promoting high-quality games, and you'll see the cream definitely does rise to the top. When there's a superb game, a lot of the times they will get really big. Games like Dead Cells get really big. Other games like a Mount & Blade 2, obviously Mount & Blade 2 is not like, you know, this mini indie game or anything like that, but just to see how well that game has done, it's obvious that games can do really, really well on Steam, even with a lot of competition or perceived competition, as long as a game is really good. Well, this data deep dive kind of goes over that idea, and I want to go over the TLDR that they posted right away. Over the years, there's been a continuous increase in the number of games achieving success on Steam. We'll dig into that in the first section below. Earnings prospect for most, but not all games improved in 2019. We'll dig into this in the second section. So, while Steam is releasing more games revenue-wise, as a median, the revenue is increasing for these games, and games are doing even better than ever before. I don't really know why that is, why people are generally spending more money on video games, because that's the ultimate conclusion that you can come to with this article, or rather this data deep dive, but hey, you can argue why that is, and maybe if some of you guys want to comment your methodology as far as buying games and how that's changed over the last few years, let me know. And I know for this channel, a lot of you guys scoff at the idea of buying games, but ultimately, you still gotta buy video games. You can't be snagging up just every freebie, and let's be honest, sometimes the freebies aren't the best. Sometimes the best games don't go free. That's just generally expected. I would not at any point expect a Resident Evil 3 or a Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord to be a freebie on Steam. That's probably just not gonna happen. However, some background, a bit of history and context is helpful for understanding the analysis that follows. Prior to 2012, games that released on Steam were handpicked by employees here at Valve. We realized that we were probably getting in the way of success for a lot of innovative games, and players were demanding more diversity in the kind of games available via Steam. Now, I wasn't as big of a PC gamer in 2012. I want to say I got into PC gaming late 2012. Maybe it was late 2011. Honestly, the years just kind of blend in at this point. However, I remember when I was in Steam, even if it was a post them opening the floodgates, the selection and the games available on Steam was far fewer than what it is today. And if you were to tell me, or if you were to ask me, do you want to go back to 2012? I would say, goddamn, I don't. Hell no, I don't want to go back to 2012. I think Steam is so much better from a games release standpoint than where we were at 7 or 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Alright, I continue. So in 2012, we officially launched Steam Greenlight to allow players to vote on the games that would be released. Initially, we were only able to accept a small number of top voted games per month. Then in August 2013, our launch capacity improved with the introduction of some new internal tools, and for every month thereafter, we accepted batches of at least 100 games. In June 2017, we launched Steam Direct with the intention of making the process of bringing a game to Steam more streamlined, transparent, and accessible. Opening the platform resulted in a large number of new titles releasing on Steam, reflecting a diversity of niches and players we couldn't have dreamed of. Creating robust discoverability tools and system was and still is crucial to ensuring that games will be surfaced to the customers who will want to play them, and we are all continually experimenting with improvements to these systems. See, that is the imperative that people should be talking about, not necessarily too many games on Steam. I don't think too many games that no one is forcing you to buy is really a problem. I think the problem is making sure that people have their eyes on the games that are relevant to them. You don't need to be promoting a game like Danganronpa to someone that only plays first-person shooters, and you can see that, and they only view on certain titles like action titles. You don't need to be promoting dating simulators to another group of other players that are playing, MMOs or whatever the case may be. I mean, sometimes there is a correlation and there is crossover, but you guys get what I'm saying. You want to put the most relevant games to the most relevant potential players, and that's always made sense. And Steam has added in a lot of features to make that a lot more streamlined and make discoverability a lot easier. And I think that's one of the best things they've done over the last few years. I'm not saying Steam is perfect, but in terms of discoverability and marketing these games, I think they've done a far better job than how they were doing just a few years ago. So how has all of this been working? From whom? Read on for the details. More new releases than ever are finding success. One of our goals is to be a platform where great games can realize success, so a natural place to start this analysis was to ask, are more games finding success? Of course, success is different for each developer, so we looked at several different benchmarks of success in this analysis. Regardless of how we define success, though, we found that an increasing number of games were achieving it. At a first pass, we tallied the number of games earning over $10,000 USD in the first 2 weeks after release each year. Now, to you, that might be thinking 10 grand, that's not a lot. Resident Evil 3 is going to make way more than 10 grand. Mount Blade 2, way more than 10 grand. However, for the smaller indie titles, 10 grand is a significant milestone, especially if a game's being released at $5 to $10. Think about that. That means, what? They're selling a decent bit of copies. If it's a $10 game, that means they sold at least 1,000 copies. And selling 1,000 copies to you might sound like nothing in the first 2 weeks. However, for a lot of these smaller games, they would kill to sell 1,000 copies, and good on them if they are achieving that milestone, because for a small indie studio, for a small indie developer that's only one person, that's a significant milestone for them to hit. For reference, most recent games earning around $10,000 in the first 2 weeks earned between $20,000 and $60,000 over the course of 12 months following release. So really, they're making more money as the time goes on. We looked at the first 2 weeks of earnings to give even weight to games released across the year, and because initial earnings are a key metric that we hear many developers using in conversation, we also decided to study paid games with an upfront price tag, and save free-to-play games for another study, since initial earnings probably aren't the right metric for the success of free-to-play games. For more on the reasoning, you can look at their analysis. They have a graph attached as well, which again, I'll leave the link in the description box below. Great deep dive. The graph shows the number of games meeting this success measure has increased pretty consistently over time, with an 18% increase in 2019 compared to 2018. That increase wasn't just due to a larger number of games on the platform. The proportion of games meeting success increased by 11% in 2019. So more people are buying more games, and that is always going to be a very big factor. Like, you could talk about limiting games on specific storefronts, and I understand why developers take the upfront money that EGS can offer you, but the fact of the matter is more people are buying more games on Steam, and this study clearly shows it. There's also, if you look at the graph, there's a significant jump between 2013 and 2014. That actually reflects the increase in the number of games they accepted on Steam beginning in August of 2013, and I feel like if I remember correctly, I probably started noticing right around then that Steam was getting a lot more games, because by August of 2013, I was pretty deep into PC gaming by that point. Many of these games weren't immediately ready for release, so the effect of that increase only really shows up in 2014. By 2019, more than 3 times as many new releases met the 10K benchmark than in 2013. That's a pretty significant increase, but obviously you have to factor in the fact of the matter is there's also a significantly more amount of games being released on Steam. I don't want to go through the rest of this study because a lot of it is information that, while is very interesting, I don't think it really applies to the topic of this video. I do also want to note the median game released in 2019 earned 24% during its first 2 weeks of sales than the median release in 2018. Once again, harkening back to the fact that these games are being bought more, the developers are making more money, and that is a great thing for Steam altogether. So this video mainly is to dispel a couple of different notions. First of all, the idea that PC gamers are pirates, I think that notion has been dispelled completely. If a game is good, people are going to spend money on it. That's always been the case. That always will be the case. You can pirate things like boxing shows, and Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather did, what was it, 4.2 million pay-per-view buys or some astronomical number like that, and pirating something like a boxing fight is a lot easier than pirating a video game, at least in my opinion. Not that I have experience in doing anything like that, obviously not. Secondly, if you are of the mindset that Steam releases too many games, you can be of that mindset, you could have that opinion, but objectively, when you look at the metrics, it just makes a lot of sense for everyone involved. It gives gamers more games to play, and these games are being bought at a significant degree, I would say, and obviously the top games are always going to do really, really well, but it lets these hidden gems actually find some success, and it lets indie developers have an outlet to at least showcase their games, not to a ton of people potentially, but potentially, obviously, that could be the case, but at the very least, there is an opportunity to make $10,000 in the first 2 weeks, and we've seen a decent bit of people doing just that in 2019, and hopefully those numbers just keep growing and growing. Eventually, you would think you would hit a wall and the number would decrease. I mean, how much money are the developers going to make in 2021, 2022, 2023? That's still up in the air, but if it consistently increases like that, that paints a pretty positive picture for Steam as a platform, and I think if you were thinking that Steam was going to slow down in their game releases anytime in the near future, I think this study kind of puts the kibosh on that idea or that theory or even that request from a lot of you guys, because it's a notion that I see in my comment section quite frequently. It's a notion I see in social media quite frequently, but in my opinion, if you just keep releasing these games, if you keep releasing high-quality titles, and even if we get a couple of bad apples in the midst of a billion games being released, that's obviously hyperbole, but 100 games being released every now and again, and whatever the case may be, if out of 10 games, I think out of 100 games, 10 of them are good, I think that's a success. That's 10 great games on a platform, and people are going to discover really good games. At least I think that's been the case, especially with the really, really good ones, and I definitely try to do my part in putting attention to games like We Went Back to make sure you guys know about that, and that's a free game of all things in other waters, and a lot of other great games that have been released. West of Dead, I think that game is going to be a really cool experience. That free beta is available now as well. So yeah, that's going to conclude this video. Again, you can take a look at the deep dive analysis in the description box below. They did a great job with this, and I'm really interested to see some of the other analytics that they put out in the future, because there are so many things to digest with Steam, and to make it the best platform possible from a marketing standpoint, from a game release standpoint, I think that's just as important as some of the other features that are obviously heavily requested, but maybe features like that aren't something you notice right away, but it is very much applicable to the developers especially, and to the gamers, it helps you find great games. That's going to conclude this video. If you guys have a request for a future video, you can leave that in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush here again. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you guys might know, YouTube's notification system is sometimes a little bit wonky, even if you're subscribed to the channel. Maybe you're not abundantly aware that I uploaded a video. To remedy that situation, make sure you hit the bell notification button. This way, whenever I upload a new video, and I try to upload as consistently as possible, you will be notified directly of the upload, and you can watch it as soon as it goes live. I would really appreciate if you guys hit that button so you can stay up to date with all of the content I'm posting. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.